What's the Skeet? Today's guest is a name that needs little introduction if you've been a local pub goer on the Isle of Man. He's the founder of a brewery that's become more than just a local favourite. It's a cultural landmark. From pint pouring at the Bottleneck Car Park to now lighting up the Villa Marina Gardens, Bushy's has been serving up more than just great ale for the past 40 years. Joining me is Martin Brunnschweiler, the man behind the brew, the island famous Bushy's bottle van, and now a brand new book which will be coming out soon, reflecting on four decades of memories, milestones, and a legacy that even he admits he never saw coming. So crack open your favourite drink, because today we're tapping into the story behind Bushy's and the man who's made it all happen. What's the Skeet, Martin? How are we?
I'm fine, thanks, Percy.
Good. Nice of you to come down here. Anyway, thank you very much for that.
It's my pleasure.
It's been a fun road getting you here. Speaking to your friend Jilly, she was like, "Well, why don't you give Martin a shout? It's coming up to TT." I thought, "Oh, maybe," and then I thought, "Wow, give it a go." So, are you guys looking forward to TT at Bushy's? Are you?
Well, yes. It's as you say. It's coming close now. It's just over a week away, and this is when things really start to heat up.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. But I always have a love-hate relationship with the TT. So
really?
Yes, I do. I mean, it's a fantastic time of year, and obviously it's a massive part of our
definitely
our business. But no, it's just I suppose that even though you've done it for years and years, you just petrified in case you forget something obvious. That's the biggest. That's
really?
The biggest. Oh yeah.
Because there's so much to think about.
Well, there's plenty of things to think about, but I suppose part of the worry is you might get complacent and just forget. I'm getting more and more forgetful as I get older, and you just pray that you haven't forgotten anything. You know, a real schoolboy error and forget whatever. But no, crazy. So yeah, it's a mad time of year.
I've seen those T-shirts that you've got coming out. They look so cool.
Yes.
Where's the idea behind those T-shirts come from, Martin? Take us back a little bit.
Well,
where does that all start?
Well,
that's a fascinating design. You see them, everybody wears it, like tourists.
I know. All. No, we've got a very good graphics person at the moment, AJ Cooper. She's based in Castletown.
Oh,
and,
nice.
No, normally we sit down. Well, it's probably towards the end of the year before, because there are the people who sell the T-shirts. They like to get them out for Christmas, so we try and get the design put to bed before the end of the year. But no, normally AJ and I, we sit down and just thrash out a couple of ideas, work out if there's an anniversary or if there's something we want to promote, and so that was with the 40th anniversary. No, she came up with the idea of having Bushy on a classic. I think he's on a Norton,
yes,
and with wings, and he's time flying. He's holding up an old digital clock, and 2025, and time flies while you're having fun.
Does that sort of represent your career and business? Really,
I think so. I mean, I suppose the fact that I love beer, and that was a big attraction in the first place. I love drinking beer, and it just seemed like a fun. I used to be a chef a long time ago, and that was okay, but it wasn't as sociable.
Aye.
Often in the kitchen, you're stuck out the back, and you don't see many people.
Hot and sweaty back
it can
there,
be very, and I have to say, back when I was doing it, the pay was never as good as they get nowadays, and it was crazy. the atmosphere could be toxic at times in kitchens.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, back then it wasn't unheard of, getting kicked or, if you weren't going fast enough, they'd come around and put a hot poker on your arm or something.
Really? That's crazy.
Oh, and it was a bit.
That is crazy. But then what was that transition like, going from being a chef to then start a front of house sort of thing?
Well, yes, it was because my sister, going back all the way back, my sister Nikki she'd taken on a lease of the old Bushy's. Sorry, it was Zhivago's bar back then, where the Yateses used to be. It was basically as you got off the ferry. It was one of the first things to see.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked. I'd been working as a chef, and she asked if I'd come over, and just for a weekend to make some snacks for her opening bash in Zhivago, what was Zhivago's. And I didn't have anything on. I said I'd give it a well, I thought it was going to be a weekend.
Yeah.
And after a while, she asked, after the weekend, she said, well, could you stay on for a week or so till we get on our feet?
Mm-hmm.
So I gave that a bash. And no, it just sort of somehow it stretched into it's over 40 years now. So yeah, it's fantastic.
It's crazy how something so almost fate, really, that, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, it's funny. I've met a few people who ended up in the Isle of Man who didn't actually plan it, but no, it just grabs you that way sometimes.
Yeah, what about it grabs somebody who comes here for that first time sort of thing?
Well, this is it. I think it's. I'm not sure. Can't really put my finger on it because I've worked in some fantastic places. When I was chefing, I worked in Australia and mainly London, Switzerland, and Hong Kong, and I love them all. But
what draw you to here, man?
Well, I think there's just something about the Isle of Man. It just ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah,
and I just like the laid back sort of attitude. Apart from TT, should I say? That sort of goes against the grain a bit. That's
definitely.
It's funny, in the pub game, most people in the UK or across, they'll sort of say, "Oh, their big time of year is Christmas," and Christmas doesn't even register on our radar compared to TT. It's just like the TT is it's just massive.
Has it always been like that, Martin?
I'd say for people in the pub game. Yes, and people in most hotels and catering, I think it's always been such a huge part of the. I suppose if you went much further back, when the island still had a very busy tourist season, the TT was just, I'm guessing, another weekend or another couple of weeks. But certainly in the time that I've been coming, it just sort of builds, and then it just draws you in and spits you out afterwards.
Yes, and it just seems like a whirlwind sometimes.
Well, it is.
Doesn't it?
No, it is a whirlwind, and no, it's an amazing time, and I suppose it's a funny one because there is a very well-known saying in business that said, "Oh, never put all your eggs in one basket."
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, when you're thrown, you're given no choice.
It's your only basket.
Well, exactly. You don't have much choice in the matter, and you can't ignore it. And the fact of the matter is, certainly, that when we were doing, when you put in things like the old Bottleneck Car Park, that sort of operation, it is more than half of your annual turnover takes place in that.
Seriously?
Yeah. More, yeah.
Oh my God!
I know. So that is and that's a very dangerous position to be in, which we found out to our to our horror. Well, first time was in 2001 when the TT was cancelled for foot and mouth.
Yes. Okay, that was before my time. But
no, so that was
about that time.
Oh well, that was painful. That was seriously painful, and no, we went ahead. We were asked, because when the races were. They were called off. Unbelievably, a lot of people still came over because it was. I think they normally say around 40,000 bikers come for the TT.
Yeah.
And I think 15,000 still came over, and because they decided they still wanted to see the island, or even though there was no racing.
Yeah.
And we were asked by the police and the tourist board at the time if we'd still put our beer tent on, because they wanted to try and. Keep people in Douglas. They asked if we put a lot more daytime entertainment, music and stuff, just to try and discourage the bikers from going around the island. And if that foot and mouth had reached the island, they didn't want it to. They didn't want to sort of allow it to spread.
100%.
Yeah, which we fully understood. So anyway, we did go ahead and put on our beer tent. Despite there being the race, and no, it wasn't. We had our moments, and the business. Most nights were pretty busy, very busy. But with hindsight, it wasn't worth doing.
Yes.
And that missing that one TT, it was so painful. I think it was about 3 or 4 years before we really got over that.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow. Well, does that sort of represent those early days? That was what Bushy's highlight of the year was back then.
Oh, no question.
What were those early days like? Did you get any sort of disasters, any real sort of highlights of back then? 80s.
It was funny because the whole thing just evolved, because when we just had the pub, the big change happened. I mean, we used to get it was a busy pub, and we used to have bands playing, and it was a busy spot. But the big change happened, and I couldn't give you a year, but it would have been in the late 80s, I think, that the Department of Transport decided to make Victoria Street one way. Right, so you go straight down, because before then it was two way, and you could, but what that meant is it built a sort of pedestrian area outside Bushy's, outside the pub, and weirdly enough, our first reaction was we objected to that, because it meant we'd be losing our car parking spaces. We hadn't actually thought about that it was going to create this fantastic area for the pub. And which is what happened, and so basically people, hundreds used to congregate outside the pub at night, and that's when it was like a spontaneous thing that all the bikers, or a lot of the lads, especially the show-offs, they started doing stunts, doing donuts and a few wheelies and whatever.
They must have been good times.
But it was just spur of the moment. Nothing was organised, but the big crowds were forming. We were really lucky at the time, because there were two coppers, two inspectors in Douglas at the time, who they could see the benefits of keeping the bikers happy, and I'm happy to name them. It was Dudley Butt and Neil Kinraid, who were cracking. They had the right idea of what Douglas needed during the TT.
That's sort of.
So they encouraged it. Well, yeah, and what happened was it sort of built from a spontaneous thing. In the end, the crowds got so busy they had to put barriers up, railings up every night, because you didn't want people spilling out.
Seriously?
And then they started to bring in proper stunt riders, and all sorts of things were going on, and and that in itself, there was a lot still spontaneous stuff. There were streakers and all sorts of, but it just added to the atmosphere.
Craziness.
It was a bit. But and I suppose some people would say that was probably when it was at its best, because things did get very almost over-organised after that. This is when health and safety starts to kick in, and I think everyone was everyone's conscious about somebody.
Sort of right place, right time.
Well, it was.
That's what that's ringing to me.
Yeah, no, it was. It was a very it was a special time, and it was fantastic. And I suppose, but I think, as I said, when my sister first took the lease on the pub, it was a 14 year, so we knew that when she took it on late 84, it was going to expire in 98, so that was 14 years. And when the lease finally did expire, or certainly the year before it was due to expire, everyone said, what's going to happen, if there's no pub, how's it going to, how's the atmosphere going to carry on? And thankfully, it was with those two policemen, and there was a really good man at the tourist board at the time, Terry Toohey, who he was a very sort of forward-thinking man, and we had a good minister at this time. The tourist minister was David Cretney, who still he still does stuff.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah, and between them, we said, look, we could see this car park opposite the pub. And we said, how would you feel if we were to try for a year, just see how it goes, put a beer tent up, and try and keep it going? So we were given the all clear for just a 1 year initially.
Yeah.
See how it went, and
Was that success that first year?
Unbelievable. Even I have to say, it was the worst weather that people could remember for a long time. It was was a deluge. But despite that, it was still. I mean, we actually in one end we actually set up because a lot of people were bikers were having to go home early because it was so wet. They got washed out of their campsites. We set up tumble dryers and spin dryers, to help them to dry out. No, so that's how bad. But anyway, despite that, it was very successful. People loved it, and basically we were there for the next 20 years.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
man.
it was
is crazy because I never got to experience that marquee and Bottleneck Car Park, but I hear memories and memories and memories that still go on today about the times that people spent there.
Well, it was it was a great atmosphere, and one of the benefits, because the old pub was great, but it was lots of little rooms and so many bottlenecks trying to get through, from one bar to another, and it was slow to get served because people just couldn't. Whereas when we had a blank canvas for the new beer tent, we came up. My manager Harry Barber at the time, we came up with this idea of having a big long row of people just pre-pouring.
Yes.
Because our concept was, look, when you go to a McDonald's, the person who serves you, or any of these fast food, the person who serves you doesn't walk around the back and start making the burger. They just turn around and grab it.
Light bulb.
Yeah, it was a bit. So we thought, let's speed things up. So we had a team of people just pouring and a team of people on the front just serving, and it really did. It sped things up massively.
Wow.
So that was something that we
game changer.
Well, it was. It was, and it meant we could get a lot more people. There was a lot more people on the site, and it was I mean, with all the stuff going on outside, it was a proper, really good atmosphere. The bands every night.
Yeah, what does it mean to you when people like that being 20 years there? That is a long time.
It was.
When people talk to you about memories that they have there, how do they make you feel? Like,
it was amazing.
Just make you reminisce on those times, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I love talking about it, and I have to say, one of the things that I'm planning to do in the book, we're going to have for the different chapters. We're going to have. I'm still waiting to hear how the technology is going to work, but my thought is we're going to have a QR code on most chapters, and that will take you through to a gallery of videos and pictures and things. Because people have been hundreds of people are sending in their photographs and videos and bits and pieces. So it should, just say if you're wanting to talk about TT 1991 or whatever, you'd be able to go in and see memories of that year, that year or whatever.
Wow.
Or if there'll be. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to almost have an unlimited, a number of pictures, and people just keep sending me stuff out of the blue, and I'll just put it to one side, and as soon as the book's ready, hopefully you'll be able to access it through.
That would be class. You don't see many books that you can do that in.
Well, again, I'm sure I'm absolutely hopeless when it comes to technology, but I was just thinking, surely that's a way of doing it. I'm hoping I haven't got it wrong, but
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll give you a way of, and as you say, so I'm hoping there'll be plenty of videos of stuff that used to go on in the old, bands playing in the old tent. And
bet it was wild.
At times, it could do. It was wonderful, But it's never. I mean, that's the whole thing about the TT. There's never any trouble with the bikers. Are just so they're as good as gold. Because I've seen and I've heard of bike meetings in Europe and over in England, and things can get quite nasty over there. But thankfully, the island just doesn't seem to attract the gangs.
Yeah, it's organic in its own way, isn't it?
And I think the bikers that come to the Isle of Man, they love the fact that the place encourages bikers, it welcomes them.
Yes.
And I think it's respected for that reason.
100%, Mark.
Yeah. But,
100%. And it's what makes the island special, in a sense. The island comes alive for TT, doesn't it?
Definitely.
We need to cherish that and keep it so it's not. Hopefully, that it's not too commercialised, if that makes sense, and takes that fun side of things away. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do actually. Yeah, I would be concerned if it became too, as you say, commercialised, a bit too corporate and everything. I'm guessing there will be room for stuff like that, and if people want that, crack on. But as long as they don't lose track of the people who actually, made it what it is, and it's always been, well, I think the fact that the whole event depends on that army of volunteers, the marshals.
Yes.
I don't think it can ever become too.
They're so essential, aren't
they? It
just wouldn't run.
Just couldn't happen without them. So
and most of them are all of them are volunteers.
They
to
are.
my knowledge,
They are.
Anyway.
Yeah, and no, they're just crucial to the whole thing.
Are you a big fan of watching it, Martin? Do you enjoy actually watching the
I have to say, no, I'm not really.
Are you an atmosphere type of man?
I love the atmosphere, and I if I ever do watch, I'll always try and watch on one of the nice safe bits. I hate the thought of I'm a coward, I suppose. I hate the thought of that somebody might come off and hurt themselves.
I wouldn't call you a coward, Martin. I'd probably call you sensible.
Well, yeah, it's just I get quite squeamish, and the thought of someone having a bad accident. So if I do watch, it tends to be on a nice straight. Yeah. But because we were always so busy, I didn't get many chances. I'd try and pop up to the grandstand maybe for half an hour here and there just to get the atmosphere, but. No, but
it's your busiest time of the year. Actually, I hadn't thought about it like that. To be fair, why would you work when you? And that's when all your income's over half your income for the year is coming in.
Exactly. No, you have to be
flat out, pin your ears back.
You have to be around and just on your. Yeah, you just got to be on your top. Everything's at full stretch, and you've just got to be. You've just got to be
crazy
on top of it all.
What makes now the sort of right time to write this book, though, Martin? Do you think?
Good question. No, it was John Quirk, who's sort of writing it on my behalf, if you like.
John's a dear friend of our family, like a good man.
Oh yeah, well, he's obviously a very experienced author, and it was John who spotted the dates coming up. It was last year that he spotted that 2025 would have been the 40th anniversary of when I first started brewing in the basement of the old pub, and he just put a couple of ideas together and it made sense. So I could say that it was John's suggestion. He was the catalyst. But
the catalyst, I like that.
Yeah,
got the ball rolling.
He did, and I mean, since we announced it, we did make a little announcement, and as I said, lots and lots of people have been sending us their pictures and memories of the old pub and and other things, just because it sort of encompasses, apart from the pub and the Bottleneck Car Park and the Villa, it's also the other pubs that we've been involved with, the Bay and Port Erin, the Rovers Return in Douglas, and a couple of other pubs that we've been involved with over the years. So we'll have different chapters on all those.
That's crazy.
On all those different areas.
The idea of writing a book ever came into your head before?
No.
Never came into it ever before?
No, I can't imagine. I mean, apart from, I don't know what else.
You're a beer brewer, why do you need to write a book?
Well,
that's a good point.
I wouldn't.
That's probably the way you thought about it.
I wouldn't have anything else I could really talk about, it's all I've done for the last 40 years. So
I'm sure you've done a lot more than just that.
Well, it's been pretty well. It has been my focus, and I suppose. Bushy's it has become my life with the all the different things that we've done. But no, I mean, I'm hoping there will be all sorts of bits of interest, stuff that people wouldn't have known about. I can sort of spill a few beans here and there,
little cheeky bits and pieces.
Yeah, I don't want.
That's cool. I think the horseman's just kicked the gate down there. I'm a bit of a fan of the Norseman lager.
Oh yeah.
Now, talk to me through the Bushy's Ale,
yes,
Norseman lager, and I believe you've got another lager out now, have you?
We do, yeah.
What's that one called again?
It's called Lerger.
Right, okay.
Now, Lerger is, I had to be told how to pronounce it. That's the Manx word for strong.
Right.
Lerger, Lager.
Lerger.
And no, it was... I don't know if you know the O'Meara's down at the O'Meara's down at the Albert in Port St Mary. There's a whole bunch of Manx speakers, so they I was told the proper way to pronounce it. And it's a lovely. It is 5.4%, so it's got a bit of a kick.
Was that new? Is that new? Is it?
Yeah,
when did that get launched?
Just a couple of months ago.
Right.
Okay. That was that is pretty new very new, and Norseman has been around a fair bit longer than that.
Lovely drop.
Yeah,
It is a nice drop. What would you go to if you were to drink in either of the three?
Well, I'm not. I will drink lager if there's nothing. I'm an ale drinker, really.
You're an ale drinker.
On the whole, and I'll. I suppose it depends what mood you're in, but you know, my problem is I like them all, yeah. But Bushy's regular bitter 3.8 that absolutely suits me perfectly.
Nice.
It's just the right strength. I do sometimes. I know if I've had anything much stronger, I do tend to have to take a pint of water to bed with me.
Get a bit
and I get a sort of parched throat. Whereas if I drink the regular 3.8 Bushy's bitter, that's just perfect. I don't need to drink water or anything.
Maybe you've got similar taste buds to other people, Martin. Maybe they're all resonating with you in that sense.
Well, yeah. And it's but brewer Curly, he's come up with some lovely brews. I mean, there are a couple of. I mean, it's a fairly popular. It's a fairly popular style at the moment. Is these IPAs?
Yes, I was just going to. That is literally what I was going to ask you about. Well, have you got any of them coming out? Or
we've got a couple. We've got we've had one for a while now called Goth.
That's right. I've heard of that. Actually,
Goth. You'll see that in a few pubs around. Now, Goth. That's based on our friend. I don't know if you've seen a label, but it's got a sketch of our friend. He's known as Raz. He was an old Bushy's pub regular. He is a goth.
Yeah.
And he's the cartoon who's in the clip, the pump clip of that one.
That's cool.
That's a 5%er, so that's got a bit of a kick.
Whoosh! Look out.
And then there is another one. So that's we call that just a sort of. They're all these IPAs. They all tend to be like an American style.
What's the difference, though, Martin, between an ale and an Indian pale ale?
Right. It's a funny one because the original many years ago, the reason they called it India Pale Ale, it was to send to the troops when the empire was still going, to send to the troops in India.
Right.
So they made this pale ale, which was a lot stronger because it had to survive the journey, because it took them weeks and weeks to get out to India.
Yeah.
So they used to brew this, and it was called India Pale Ale. It would have been quite different from what people are drinking nowadays, but the Americans got hold of this idea, and they took it off in a whole different direction, and they've developed a lot of their own very aromatic and very spicy hops. And so most IPAs that you'll see nowadays have got an American influence, and that's where they've got this real hoppy. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I'll have a sip.
Weird taste, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Some people say quite grapefruity.
Yes.
They've got a sort of zesty, citrusy. My wife Debbie, she loves them.
Yeah,
I'm not as keen. I prefer
bit too flavoursome.
They are a bit. But they're definitely, they're very popular with some
strong ones.
We've actually got another. I brought out a stronger one ourselves, which has got Away with the Fairies. So that one, and that's a 5.4 one, and that's more like we call that more of a West Coast IPA style. So it's a slightly more. They've got a few more of the West Coast hops in that one, American hops.
Right.
But, that's a very
Away with the Fairies.
Yeah.
I like that little bit of a Manx link, but it also probably quite relatable when you drink it. You can end off on a tangent.
Exactly. So they're two very popular brews, and
but then the Bushy's ale is brewed completely differently to IPA.
It is. Yes.
So how do they make the Bush? How would you make a Bushy's pint? Obviously, you might have seen it. I know you don't brew, but if you should watch Curly brew or whatever, what's the sort of process to make a Bushy's ale?
And their ales, they are using. So yeast is the magical ingredient, and that's this organism, this magical which feeds. So when you put yeast into the malted, we make a solution of malted barley. So it's a sweet. And it's got some hops, which gives it some bitterness. So we've got this, and then we put the yeast into that. You just put it in at sort of a warm temperature, and then the yeast feeds and it ferments, and it feeds on the sugars from the malted barley.
Yeah.
And basically it's known as a top fermenting yeast. So basically, and it's a much quicker process. So it takes roughly from start to finish about a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, about a week from start to finish to brew an ale.
So you can put quite a bit out.
Oh yeah, no. So the traditional ales you can turn around, fermenting roughly a week, and then ideally you put the barrel to one side for a good another week or two, depending on the time of year. But so it's quite you let it. It's a condition. That's why we call it cask condition. So you let it have a condition in the barrel, and that's when it gets its second fermentation, and that's what gives it the sparkle because it's getting pressure and it's bubbling away inside the barrel.
Wow.
The ale, the lagers.
Yes, that was my next question.
And the IPAs, we use the same. They use a different yeast, which is it is a lager yeast, and that's known as a bottom fermenting yeast. So with that one, it basically takes a lot longer, and that can take up to a month. So it's a much slower process. It all happens at a lower temperature. But it does. It takes a lot longer, and it's a more expensive. Theoretically, it should be a more expensive product because it takes a lot longer, and it takes a fair bit more processing.
Yeah. So would you have to stock up then, coming up to TT?
Absolutely.
So Curly will be brewing up from say
Easter. From Easter
Wow.
It depends when Easter falls, but we always used to think in our heads
rush.
That's roughly the time that we'll start stockpiling the beer for the TT, because obviously we'll still be selling beer to the pubs who are buying it anyway, but we've got to have this stockpile building up for that huge.
How much extra during TT do you think you put out than normal? Is it double? Is it triple?
Oh, it's more than that. It's probably 5 or 6. Well, I said that the beer tent we used to do. We used to say that with the beer tent, I'm going back before we got involved at the Villa, because that moved up to a different level. In the beer tent, we used to do roughly in a day, we could sell what a medium pub would do in a month. So we could do a year's trade in the Bottleneck in 12 days.
Holy horseradish!
That's the sort of that was the sort of levels.
That puts it into a bit of a better scale.
Yeah. So
Good Lord.
And but it was because it just evolved. We just sort of took it in our stride and
see how it goes.
And you've got plenty of staff, so we've got a good. They have a fantastic team, which is obviously down at the Villa Marina now.
What was that transition like, Martin? Going from the Bottleneck to the Villa Marina. I wanted to really get onto that.
Yeah.
When you were talking, I thought I've only ever known it at the Villa Marina, and since I've known it there, I'm only 21.
Right.
So I've only been. Well, it's probably. How long has it been going at the Villa Marina for?
This the first one was 2018, so this will be our 6th. I think we did 18, 19. Oh no, sorry, we missed 2 years because of COVID, didn't we?
Yes, that's
18,
right.
19, missed 20, 21, so 22, 23, 24. This will be our 6th. This will be the actual 6th at the Villa.
Yes,
but because
so I've probably been
there
there
were 2 years
4
missing of those. Yeah,
of those.
Yeah.
And it's always been very good.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you left the Bottleneck Car Park, there must have been a transition, mustn't there?
There was. I mean, it was a painful thing because we'd been at the Bottleneck for 20 years, literally. We did 20 years, but for whatever reason, the powers that be decided it had to go out to tender, which we sort of understood. I suppose we'd always known. Because we're only a smallish operation.
What do you mean by out to tender? Sorry.
So what they had to do is they would.
They as in.
This was Douglas Corporation.
Okay.
Who owned the car park.
They
decided they wanted to basically to put it out to the public to see who else might be interested in running it.
Right.
And doing something, and it went out to the highest bidder basically.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose it was a funny one because we sort of invented it. Nothing had ever happened on that car park before. During TT. So I suppose, but 5 years beforehand, it went out to tender previously, and they decided, but we were doing a good job, and they basically kept us on. But the obviously once that 5 years was up, it went out again.
Yeah.
And that's when we got blown out of the water by a much higher tender, which that's the way of the world, we understand. Yeah, that's how things work. But it shook us. It shook us to our foundations. But
must have been a scary time for you.
Well, it was, because I mean,
staff.
Well, there were lots and lots of things we had to think about, but I suppose I did have a big gripe at the time, because it was kept, the decision was kept right up until the last minute, and we'd asked them if they would put it out for tender even before TT, even before the last one, because it would give people a chance to give everyone a chance to make plans. We could have told our staff, well, because we had like 120.
Wow.
We always had a big pool of people working. We wanted to be able to sort of give them an idea that what we would be doing the following year, but they refused to do it, and the decision went out after TT, and it was sometime in July that we would give them the decision that we weren't going to be doing it. So
you weren't going to be doing it?
We weren't. No, they'd chosen someone else who I don't want to talk about.
No, that's okay.
No, I'll keep that
understandable
to myself. But it was, and yeah, Harry and Barber, my right-hand man, it gave us a chance to, we had started thinking, just in case, where else would be, and I think there were 6 sites we looked at.
Yeah.
And but as soon as we'd looked at the Villa Marina, there was nowhere else that came close.
It's just perfect. Almost,
it really is. It was such and it sort of trebled. It almost trebled the size of what we were doing.
You think?
Oh well, the old site, the old car park, we were licensed for 1,500 people.
Okay.
Which is fairly big.
Yes, very big.
Whereas the Villa, it's 4,000. So it nearly trebled. I mean, and even that, I know that you could get a lot more people in the gardens. But anyway, that was the figure that the fire brigade were happy with.
Wow,
so that we've always stuck with that.
And with like big stage and
and
it's more like a festival vibe in there, isn't it?
So it gave us a chance to have lots of food stalls, and there's different bar areas. It just exactly as you said. So we went in that year. We went from being a beer tent on a car park to a mini festival.
Yes.
And it was, I know it's a weird thing, but with hindsight, it's the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yeah.
So
as much as it was scary.
It was scary, but I suppose until you've been forced into that situation, I know you just never know what life's going to throw at you. But it was a very, we were very fortunate.
Are you proud of it now?
Absolutely. I think that possibly was almost our finest hour, and we didn't mope, and we didn't go around moaning about losing the old site. We thought, right, we'll just focus our energies into looking for a new site. And as I said, once the Villa had been chosen, Harry, he's very good. He's very good at organising stuff like that. That's his absolute forte. He loves a tape measure. He loves going around.
Get his teeth stuck into
exactly. He's very organised. I'm not. I just sort of think I just have an idea of something, and he's a details man.
Yeah, so he puts it to fruition.
He did. Yeah, that's his.
Was there did you miss a TT?
No.
Was it bang straight?
We went
to the
straight
Villa?
into it. So our last TT on the Bottleneck was 9. I'm getting mixed up now. 2017.
Right.
That was the last one, and then we went straight to 18 with our first at the and I'd say
proudest moment of the Bushy's journey.
It was just amazing, really. Yeah, we hit the floor running. It was still worrying because you just never know. I think a lot of people thought, because obviously the Bottleneck, it was the first stop off the boat, and they thought, well, they'll still go in there, and they'll still. But no, people found us. we did a bit of guerrilla marketing with some
guerrilla marketing. I like that.
We had a bit of we got some stencils made. Big stencils made, and we went round jet washing the pavements. So
Right.
it said, it had an arrow saying "Bushy's this way." So we sprayed the clean bit. You could read it. "Bushy's this way," and a few little things like that, just to let people know where we were. But because it was a worry, because the costs of moving to the villa are significantly higher.
Yeah.
But thankfully the rewards are better as well. So
Yes.
you've got a lot more people to. But and as
cool.
I said, it was a very lucky situation.
Yeah, when you think about 40 years with Bushy's.
Yeah, it makes me feel very old.
Yeah, well, it might make you feel old,
Yeah.
and obviously great memories.
Yeah.
But the distance from where you started to now is crazy.
It is.
Do you ever wonder where Bushy's would be in 40 years' time?
Well,
Another 40 years. Do you ever think about it like that?
I probably can't think that far ahead.
Or 20 years, where can you see Bushy's in 20 years?
40 years? But
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do. I suppose if I was thinking in the future, our big milestone would be 50 years. So that would be 10 years from now. And I mean, our very, very exciting project at the moment is we're actually going to be moving everything to Castletown. So our brewery at the moment is out at Mount Murray. I'm not sure if you
Okay, yeah, I know where Mount Murray is.
So it's up behind where the Forge restaurant and pub is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where we've been there for since 1990. I can't do this.
35 years.
That's 35 years. So that site that was an old farm. That was some old farm buildings which we converted. So that site has served us well. But no, we've been given an opportunity to move to this fantastic site in Castletown, on the old Castletown Commissioners site, which is behind S&S Motors.
Right, yes.
There's a yard behind there.
Okay.
And the plan is that's going to have a new state-of-the-art brewery. And there are some lovely old stone buildings there, and that's going to become the tap room and the restaurant.
Restaurant as well.
Yeah, there's going to be a place for a bite. You can have a bite to eat, and there'll be a little visitor centre and a gift shop. So it's the hope is that we're going to be right there in walking distance from the square in Castletown, or off the trains or wherever. And people will be able to come and have a little brewery, little brewery tour, and have a few tastes, and so it's very exciting.
Does that bring that side of it to another level? Obviously, there's the tent and all, but having the access for public to come and exposure all sort of throughout the year.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, the old site, it served us well, but where we were very much out of town, and it was a working site. We weren't really geared up to tours and stuff. We've done a few over the years, and we've had some good nights out there. But it was very much.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was very much just a sort of having a bit of a bash in a factory, really. Whereas this is going to be a lot more sort of tailored towards visitors. Yeah, it's I'm sure.
It'd be a tourist destination, nearly, won't it?
Well, it is very much so, because we're hoping that we can, if there are coach parties coming to Castle, or these cruise boats or whoever, if we can tap into those markets and get those people around, it's fantastic. It's quite a popular thing with small, certainly breweries across in town centres or city centres. It's part of, as you say, it's part of the tourist. It's part of the offering that people are shown, when they're going around a city or a town like that. So I think it's going to be amazing.
You're excited for it?
Very. This is, as
deal.
You say, it is going to take things to a new level. It's going to
get in there. I'm so pleased for you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds tremendous.
Yeah. No,
will there be? Have you thought of names for the place?
Well,
a bar name or so?
It's going to be Bushy's Brewery.
Yeah.
It's still going to be Bushy's Brewery, but again, I'm going back long before you were born. But when I first came to the island, Castletown Brewery a very big. There were two big breweries. They were on the island. There was Castletown. No, there were only two breweries: Castletown and Oakles. And Castletown were quite a bit older than Oakles.
Is that like Castletown ale drinkers come from?
Correct. Yep. Castletown ale drinkers, and they had a lovely. You'll see it. It's called Brewery Wharf. So if you ever go through Castletown, it's apartments now.
Yeah.
But that's where the old Castletown brewery used to be.
Right.
And now, for whatever reason, they Castletown and Oakles they merged in about 87 or so. Around, that was roughly the time, and that was what.
It's sort of tough, that, isn't it?
Well, it was, but that was the catalyst that spurred us on to expand what we did, because they had all of a sudden they sold off about 20 odd pubs, and that gave us the potential to have pubs to sell to sell our beer, because I'd been brewing for about 5 years in the basement.
Yeah,
but we couldn't make it anymore. It was a tiny piece of equipment, but as I said, that was what gave us the spur to go. So
that kick.
Yes.
How do you feel about the franchised pubs sort of thing? Is it there needs to be different types of people, different types of brewers and things like that on the Isle of Man to have variety, doesn't there?
Definitely.
If everyone's ran by the same business, it doesn't make sense, does it?
It becomes very dull. And as I think I said, when I first came, there were two breweries.
Yeah.
When I started, we became. I don't think we ever ran. I think Castletown had already closed by the time I started. Maybe no, I'm wrong. They were still going. So because our brewers reference, you had a brewer's reference. I think Castletown was 001.
Yeah.
Oakles were 002, and we became 003. But then they got together. So I'm guessing they lost the license. But now, I don't know if you follow it, but there are now 8 brewers on the island.
Right, let me see if I can name them. Let us play this game. Right, Oakles, Bushy's, Noah's. Do they brew? Are they new?
They're definitely one. They've got a license.
Whew. And I think that's all I know. So come on.
There's another called Odin.
Oh yes.
You might have seen that.
Yeah.
There's one which was started by the old Oakles brewer who he retired, but he's called Mike Cowborn. He's got one called Radical.
Right.
He's in a couple of pubs. Then you've got the new Carews in Port Erin.
Oh, is there a new one? Is there?
I don't know. If
I haven't heard of that yet.
Carews, they make nice beer. They're in the car park where the old fire station used to be.
Yes,
you'll find them there. They do
six.
Nice 6. Hold on, I'm starting to look. Oh, we've got one in what's it called? In I'm showing
we're testing our knowledge.
You're testing my knowledge. In Union Mills, it's and theirs starts with a Canines. Canines. It's in that petrol station at Union Mills.
Yeah.
And then the very last one.
Can we think about it?
There is one, and it's a tiny one whose name I cannot remember, but they're based in Laxey.
Right.
It's
okay.
a tiny one in
8
Laxey.
now.
Yes, 8. Now, hey, listen. As you say, it makes for the drinker. It means there's a lot more choice than there ever was.
Which is good, isn't it? Surely.
Definitely, it's always good. I always think that competition is essential.
Now that leads me quite well into what do you think of the Wetherspoons, Martin?
Good question.
I'd like to see that from a point of view of someone who's always believed in local pubs.
Yeah. Well,
and I'd just like to see it. Are you supporting it?
Yes.
Bushy's supporting it?
Well, we've been asked about supply. We haven't heard anything just yet, but so we've said yes, we will. If we're not going to. How should I put it? If they like our beer, we'd be delighted to sell it, but we're not going to sort of sell it at ridiculously reduced rates or anything like that. We've got a price that we sell to all pubs.
Yes,
and they'd have to. But I think on the whole, it could be good for the island in as much as I think it'll stimulate.
The reason being,
go on.
The reason being,
Well, unfortunately, pubs they seem to be struggling at the moment, and I don't know if it's a cost of living thing, but there are a lot. People are going out a lot less,
Mm-hmm.
and that's unfortunately that's a fact. And I suppose I'm hoping that if this can stimulate people because of their lower pricing or whatever, that can get people out who might not have gone out. And I don't think many people spend a night at Wetherspoons. I think they might go for a couple of drinks before going out.
Yes.
And hopefully it might sort of get people. It might get people out.
That makes
beforehand.
sense. I hadn't thought about it like that, you know.
Well, I'm hopeful. I mean, you know, I think I'm a big admirer. When I was chefing in London back in the late '70s, I remember him starting his chain of pubs, these Wetherspoon pubs, and back then he was very, how shall I put it? He was a good businessman. His pubs, they wanted to be all things to everyone, so they used to have on a good range of proper real ales, which you'd pay normal prices for, but then he'd always have a really cheap. There were beers around, things like Tart and Bitter and McEwen's and stuff like that, but really cheap beer, and that was for the pensioners and the students.
Yes.
So he was always trying to be all
he knew what he was doing.
He
didn't
he? And that was when he only had a handful of pubs, and obviously they have become massive. I think they're around 1,000 now.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, I think they've got about 1,000. But the other thing that I think he earned his knighthood alone because he introduced real ale to airports, which was unheard of before. Airports were the most grim places to go for, if you wanted to have a drink or a bite to eat. And when Wetherspoons used to started opening up in Gatwick and Heathrow and other places, to actually see cask conditioned beer in airports was unheard of. And
crazy.
Yeah, so I do know I can see that there are small towns across where Wetherspoons has devastated the other smaller pubs.
Yes.
And I don't like to hear that, but again, it is a question of letting the market decide. And if those little pubs weren't viable, then it's very sad. But I'm hoping we won't have that here.
Yeah, I don't think we will, Martin. I think what you've pointed out there about it brings people back out and gets them into that feeling of the pub vibe and how important it is going out and seeing people.
No,
By having that being affordable, it makes sense in a way, doesn't it?
It does. And so I'm always looking for the positives in things.
Yeah, you've got to, haven't you?
Well, it's not always the right thing to do, but I'll always look for the positives. I'm looking for the positives in Wetherspoons, and and if we can possibly sell a bit of our beer through them, that's a bonus.
Too right.
But no, and I've always thought if Wetherspoons was ever going to come to the island, I'd have loved to have had a pub next door to it, because I think
yes.
And I think they will feed. I think they will when that new travel lodge opens on the old Villiers site there. I think a lot of the people staying there will use it for their breakfast.
Yes,
because Wetherspoons breakfasts are very good
and affordable.
Yeah, they're affordable, and they've got this thing of unlimited tea and coffee. I think they might have a more negative effect on cafes in around Douglas than pubs.
Yeah,
I think that could.
Hadn't thought about that either.
Yeah, I think that could be a much. They might have a bigger effect on those. But
that's an alternative view, eh? Yeah. It's none of our business in some senses. I mean, it's your business. But
well, it is, but
we've got to see how it pans out, haven't we?
Exactly.
We can't stop it.
We'll watch, and I believe on the day they're opening tomorrow morning. from what I gather, I heard that the mayoress of Douglas is going to be officially opening them at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So
wow,
I know
they'll have a good flagging in the morning, won't they?
It's funny, because people say, "Oh, Wetherspoons," I don't think hardly anyone ever drinks alcohol, at that time of day.
No,
most people are just there for the, as you say,
brekkie,
the brekkies, and what they've got to offer. But yeah,
I mean that almost that's quite a nice way to sort of wrap this episode up. I think, Martin. I think the way you've explained Bushy's journey is fascinating to me, because it's only a blip in my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But to some people, the amount of memories they've got of that place, being on the Bottleneck Car Park now in the Villa Marina, the old pub, it's even down the bay in Port Erin, that can get pretty lively in the summer with a band or two on, can't
No,
it?
it's true. No,
It's pretty. I love that pub.
Yeah, no, I love the pub. Debbie and myself, we've lived above it for 20 years.
Wow.
So no, we love that place.
It's crazy.
And no, as you say, when the weather's nice and there's a good band on the beach, it's
no better place to be, Martin, for a beer.
Oh.
But that leads me nicely into the final question that we always ask at the end of these podcasts, Martin, and it's just to generate ideas and put ideas out there. And that question is, if you could change or improve one thing about the Isle of Man, what would it be and why?
Ooh,
now, ask everyone this.
That's a big question.
Put you on the spot a bit.
Well, it is, because I love the Isle of Man. I'm trying to think of what would improve it for me. It's funny, I've been hearing people, and I have strong feelings that I do feel that the Isle of Man ought to. I hate it when I hear that young people are leaving because they can't afford property, or if they're being priced out of the market, and it just doesn't make any sense to me to have. They say there are up to 6,000 empty properties on the island.
What?
Well,
they're just building another 350 up in Douglas there, aren't they?
I know,
next to the rugby pitch.
But I think that things should be done to discourage people from allowing these properties just to lie empty. They should be. I don't know if it's put some sort of rates tax on them or something, because I do feel there's something immoral about all those empty properties.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
No, I think they should be somehow brought back into into the use and being made available to young families or whatever. Small houses, that's what they weren't meant to have been bought as investments for people.
Yes,
they should be. It's fair enough, because I'm told that there is a company or an organisation that owns over 1,000 properties over here.
You're joking.
I'm told.
That's ridiculous.
And it is, and we are talking about small 2-3 bedroom houses, and that shouldn't be allowed. I think that should be absolutely discouraged, and and try and encourage and make it affordable for young people to stay here. Yeah, and
definitely, Martin. That would lower the price down if you have to reach a certain regulation on that. I didn't know that.
No, I'm pretty sure I've heard that correctly. And fair enough, there should be, I think people who are in the property business, allow them to do commercial property and do, get involved with those sort of things. But to me, small family houses shouldn't be part of the deal. They should be left there for people who can afford them, and they shouldn't be sort of just mopped up as investments.
It's not right, is it?
No,
not morally right.
That doesn't sit comfortably.
No, that's a good point, Martin. I think that's a great way to sort of round it up. It's an important, and it's good that it's close to your heart and you have hard feelings about it, because
I do.
We need to make some things on the Isle of Man are great, and some things we need to try and improve and make life better here. And if we don't discuss them, nothing will ever come of it, will they?
Absolutely.
And that sort of rounds this episode up, Martin. Thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, my friend. Hopefully we can speak again soon. And
definitely.
And if you're at the Bushies over TT, get over there, eh? Everyone's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Definitely going to be there.
Okay, well, give me a shout.
Give you a shout. I'll see what you're up to.
It'll be a pleasure to buy you a pint.
We'll have a pint. No worries, Martin. Thank you very much.
That'll be my pleasure.
Perfect. Are you happy enough with that, Martin?
I'm happy if you are, yeah.